first episode. How are you doing this morning, Daddy?
Well, actually, it's this afternoon.
Ah, shoot, yeah.
And we thought it would be a good idea to talk about freedom of choice.
In both our lives and our wonderful equine friends' lives.
How would that make you feel if we, as your parents, didn't give you any choice?
Pretty shut down and anxious and nervous, and that I couldn't do anything because I'd feel like I would be getting in trouble about doing anything. How about you? How would you feel if you were if you didn't have a choice, aka so if you were forced to be doing everything that needed to be done?
Well, this is an interesting question because in my life, I've had plenty of times where I've had a lot of choices.
Mm-hmm.
And arguably, we make choices every day,
Mm-hmm.
like many of them. But I've also been in situations where choice really isn't an option. Like the military, like a lot of things in the military.
So you bring that up. How did you feel while you were in the military without choice?
Well, I had choice to some degree, but
yeah, but going into the military, that was a choice. But how did you feel? It's interesting that you bring that up. I haven't been in the military. I don't know what that's like.
Well, I felt pretty horrible.
Oh, okay.
Looking back on it, I really didn't like being in the military for those reasons because something called autonomy, like freedom of choice, making decisions.
You bring up vaccinations quite often. I don't know if that's something that you're comfortable sharing with the world as of right now, but you bring up the fact that when you were in the military, you kind of contemplated whether vaccines were even good for your children because of the fact that you were forced to get many of the vaccines.
Yeah, so the flu shot, you were in the military, that one vaccine comes to mind, and there was multiple ones where you were literally ordered to get a shot. And to the military's defense, the idea there is that, the powers that be determine not getting a shot is more harmful to the overall military mission than getting the shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the shot and vaccines are hot topic right now with COVID and everything. I have always been the type where I've enjoyed freedom of choice and making decisions. I've always sort of had an entrepreneurial spirit to where I like to solve problems and build things and create things and help people and help things and kind of carve out my own path in life.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when I initially joined the military, were like, "You're never going to make it in the military," which arguably I didn't. I served a good term. I honorably discharged, but I didn't make it a lifelong career, arguably for those reasons. But it's an interesting concept because to me, I kind of look at from a military perspective, you can't always have choice because, it's about war and who's going to choose to I don't know. I didn't have to do this in the military, but storm an enemy for instance, or fire down range or kill somebody. You know, who's really going to want to make that choice? And so it brings up an interesting sort of discussion as we've been working with the horses and in a lot of our past sessions or handful sessions. We don't really know when we're going to release this session. It's just a topic that kind of came to mind for both of us this morning. But when we're working with the horses specifically, talk about the transition of going from them having absolutely no choice to them being provided with choice in what we've seen.
So I like to think of, and this is completely different from, my perspective now on horse training is completely different than it used to be. When I had Mocha and everything, when I first started with horses, I guess to put it in a little bit of perspective, I was essentially trained. You don't feed horses treats when you train, and you don't give them a choice because they will always say no. I've actually had somebody, not going to mention any names, actually had somebody tell me that a horse will always say no when they're given a choice. However, I was in would you consider Maddie's course a professional course? That's like a professional...
Yeah, I mean, I would say. And she's talking the Horse-Human Connection Academy.
I've been in a...
I wouldn't call it not professional.
Yeah, I've been in a training course that uses positive reinforcement, and the trainer, Mustang Maddie, she talks about the fact that when a horse is given a choice, when a horse is given a choice to say yes and no, and when they're comfortable with the fact, and when you as a trainer is comfortable with the fact that they, with them saying no, and it's like an equal yes as it is no, then they'll start saying yes more. And I've seen that firsthand. I know you've seen that firsthand.
Oh, most definitely.
I've seen that in Mustang Maddie's horse training through her Horse-Human Connection Academy course, which was phenomenal, by the way. Choice, I think, is such an awesome thing in our lives that we all have to make choices. Even our horses without us have to make choices. For a simple example, for breakfast, we chose to eat a shake for breakfast this morning where we could have made pancakes, we could have made eggs, we could have made this. The horses have 2 hay nuts in their pens. They ultimately choose which one to go to, even if they have the same amount of hay. It's not better, it's not worse, it's maybe more convenience. I don't know, but it's a choice. It's
so interesting that you bring that up because just now I was waiting on you to come out. I was brushing Cody. And I like to brush him now. I don't ever hitch I don't ever hitch Cody up to the hitching post anymore.
And we've had Willow since May, and it is now November, and she has not been tied up at all. Since she hasn't been tied up her whole life, and she's about 7.
What do you guys think about that, by the way?
Yeah.
I'm really curious to know what some thoughts are out there about new horses that you might have, whether they're from the Mustang world or the domestic world.
Yeah.
And we don't hitch our horses up on our property. I don't know. Maybe we would hitch them up if we're out somewhere.
Yeah, I think that it's my opinion on this, and our horses are purely recreational, so, we're not in any sort of competition or show lifestyle.
Or working or anything
so
like that.
Our horses are purely recreational for us and for them, too. I feel like I'm recreation for Willow, but I'm also biased because I could spend all day out here. But, maybe for those of you that are more in the, working horse industry, really curious, your thought process on your training methods and why you train the way you do, or why you purchase the horse that was trained this way versus that way, or a simple thing like tying them up at a hitching post to be brushed. Willow...
And let's face it, though, I've seen multiple times since we've had horses in our lives, if they want to get away from the tie, they're going to get away from the tie.
Yeah.
Whether that means injuring themselves in the process or damaging some property or otherwise, they're going to get away from it. Yep. They're big, strong, powerful,
and smart as all heck
animals.
Creatures, yeah.
And so when they exercise their choice, whether they're given the freedom of choice to exercise it or not, let's face it, they're going to do what they want to do. Yeah. But hold on, wait for it. The argument against that is that, okay, well, in a lot of ways, we've applied pressure to them in different ways and allowed them to ultimately, over time, give into that. So then they won't make that choice to want to escape.
Yeah, and that's kind of, going through this positive reinforcement horse training course, again, Mustang Maddie's Horse-Human Connection Academy course, I've learned so much about, providing them the freedom of choice. And a simple example is, let me just bring up one of her horses that she worked with, Mystic. She was a Mustang, an unruly, untrainable wild Mustang, and in one of her YouTube videos, she was showing Mystic coming over, putting her head down, almost touching the floor, putting her nose into the halter so she can then fasten it, and her head was like on at her waist while she was standing up. That's one example. Another with Willow.
Well, Willow does that now.
Willow does that, but stay tuned for our Christmas.
Wait, hold on. And she has all the choice in the world at that.
Does.
Like, she's not tied up to anything. No. She's not being forced. And she just walks up, put her head in the halter, and then says, okay, like, so.
But Willow's also, teaching her to put a blanket on, because we're doing this awesome, I'm dressing our horses up for Christmas, and don't you guys worry, they're going to be perfectly comfortable with it. I'm going to go at their own pace, but as of right now, while I'm waiting for their Christmas blankets to ship, I've been working with Willow on getting comfortable with things on her back, aka a summer blanket, one of Cody's summer blankets, and I'm working with her on using the yes button to tell me, the cone to tell me go ahead and throw it on, and I'm teaching her to side pass toward me with the blanket, so then when she touches the blanket, then I'll proceed to throw it over her. And so she's like choosing ultimately when the blanket goes on her and when the blanket comes off, and she can say no and still get reinforced, yet she still says yes. I mean, you witnessed this.
Yeah, and it does boggle my mind.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still... And I don't know why I have this...
But can I less boggle your mind for a second? I want to less boggle your mind and maybe a few of your minds. So Mustang Maddie explains that choice is a necessity in life, just like reproduction, food, water, maybe mates, like friends. Us humans, we need other humans to survive. I'm pretty sure that's been proven. Horses, it's good for them to have other horses to survive because... it's them. It's just, choice is just like that. When they're given the choice, it's important. It's just as important as a meal, as...
So what I'm hearing you say is freedom of choice in the context of horses and even humans, really, perhaps even any living creature, but let's just hone in on the horses.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing you say is that freedom of choice for the horses is a necessity.
Yeah.
For them to be at their best?
Yeah. And I feel like at their best, because think about it, if we're training, say, natural horsemanship methods, and we have Mocha in the round pen, and I bring up Mocha because this is how we worked with Mocha on a daily basis. We bring Mocha in the round pen. First of all, she didn't want to go in the round pen. You remember walking Mocha in the round pen. It was like stand here, planting her feet, and she would like pull back. I'm not going in the round pen.
And this is a well-trained horse.
Yeah. And
it wasn't every single time.
No, but it was pretty often.
And
her eyes, like it was like agitated eyes. Her ears would be back and not comfortably back, like not pinned, but not comfortably back. It's like agitation. Then we'd get her in there and we'd run her around, and then she ultimately had the choice to face up, but she knew that if she didn't, she'd run around. So her I don't even know what response that is. She runs around and then she turns and faces, and then ultimately gets reinforced by getting a break from running around. There's
the release of pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's still choice there, but not really, because if she decides that, I don't want to face up with you, I want to go and get grass, natural horsemanship method's just going to say, we'll run her around again until she faces up.
And then facing up is
the submission.
They're linked with you, they're being respectful, and turning away or otherwise is often, not, I don't know if all the time, but often I've heard it as the horse being disrespectful in that way, which I 100% disagree with.
Yeah.
I don't feel like a horse is disrespectful because they turn and want to go the other direction. There's no like scientific validity to that at all.
Now, I do feel like if there's like, say I'm walking Willow around the track and she has done this like, okay, I want to graze now, and she'll like pull away and then snatch grass and then look at me like, ha, I got the grass. I feel like that could be a bit of disrespect, especially, but then again, like my mindset's elsewhere.
Yeah, but disrespect is like, we'll have to have a conversation on respect and disrespect altogether, because we can unpack that in so many different ways. So freedom of choice, what we've established this far in the conversation is that freedom of choice for us as humans and the horses is
really
a
important.
necessity. And what we are asking is if you agree with that.
Yeah.
And
if not, why?
And let's have a discussion and like.
Yeah. Because we're curious. I'm curious.
Would you like to come on and talk about it with us?
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Not in a way of like, we're not trying to coerce or like say this is the way to do it.
Yeah.
We're just saying like, in our rather limited experience, I mean, let's be honest, like we don't have a lot of experience. Right. And less than 5 years of horses in our lives, right? So we have a very limited view. Some could even say, and I've even thought about it myself, perhaps we've just gotten, quote, lucky.
Yeah.
And I toy with that. And I'm like, okay, well, I really want that unruly horse that nobody else wants. And we're going to do that, by the way. So stay tuned. I don't know if it's going to be in the coming year or a couple years down the road. But we are going to seek out and find and attract one of the most unruly horses that nobody else wants, and we're going to
help this horse.
We're going to go on a journey with that horse and see how it unfolds.
Yeah.
Because to me, it would dispel whether or not we got lucky with, say, Cody and Willow.
Yeah.
But I mean,
also believe that every horse and every animal has a potential. Even if the horse is is injured and is not rideable. Yeah, the horse is not physically capable of holding a rider, but I believe that every animal is capable of trusting and communicating and loving.
I couldn't agree more.
And I say that because first of all, I've heard many stories, particularly of dogs and cats rescues, and people have brought in these animals in that were highly abused, on their deathbed, and helped them learn to trust and love again. But I've also heard stories of horses, and I'm not saying that the training method that I'm using is right or wrong compared to natural horsemanship or whatever. In fact, most of the stories that I've heard of horses that were abused or neglected and, brought in and retaught to love and trust and communicate are natural horsemanship trained. But I think that it's possible. I don't have the...
You think it's possible to use positive reinforcement and different...
Yeah.
And freedom of choice.
Yeah, and to help the animal...
Yeah.
I watched a YouTube video, I can't remember what it was called off the top of my head, but of a Last Chance Mustang, and those are Mustang, BLM Mustangs that were adopted out 3 times and returned 3 times. And typically, they can't take the pressure, or they're not pretty enough, or they're not the right horse for this and that, and usually these horses are sold to slaughter. Anyways, they have different paperwork. Their whole adoption is different than, say, Willow, and I'll talk about this later on. But there was a video that I watched of a Last Chance Mustang who was totally shut down, and what I mean by that is, pretty much to the point where, first of all, a human couldn't walk up to her, and she would just flight, and then whites in the eyes with the look, with this just seeing a human. She was abused, and this person spent every day with her and loved her and talked to her, and eventually she talked about at the end she was riding the horse bareback and bridleless, and I'm pretty sure she was a natural horsemanship trained horse, but she was talking about how lucky she was to have saved this horse, because she was the best horse that she was the best horse that she'd ever had, and this horse was thrown away 3 times.
Yeah, it blows my mind the differences of opinion.
Yeah.
And I think in this episode, I think you can hear us kind of struggling with these questions between Alyssa and me, because people who we really respect, that we and that we've called friends, have completely different opinions, and and we're curious about it.
Yeah.
We're not wanting to like
We're not wanting to
shut
say,
it
oh, what
down,
we do is
but
right and your way is wrong.
but we're also on a mission as part of the show, and arguably one of the big reasons this show even began was because of the eureka moments that we're having and the light bulbs that are coming on, and just the feeling that we get. Like this morning, I can't like begin to explain just the feeling this morning.
And the connections and the love that we can feel from our horses.
Yeah. And
I mean, do you want to go into detail about this, a little bit of this morning with Cody?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
maybe bring in your prior riding experiences versus now.
Yeah. So, I mean, riding before, and I've mentioned this, in different sessions. I don't know if they're going to come before or after this, because we're kind of recording a number of these and kind of sorting them out as we go. So thank you for your patience in listening. And but when I started riding, it was all about recreation and just hopping on the horse and not really giving two thoughts about what the horse wants.
So how did Cody react, say, the first time you got on him versus
He just didn't want to go at all, and so, I didn't like kick into him or I didn't even have spurs, but it was definitely like a lot of leg pressure and like kind of getting his attention a lot, and then I'd get him going, and then he'd be agitated and like maybe trying to rush back to his pen or rush back home, and I would have to do the figure eights or the circles and calm him down and get his mind, so to speak. And then like that one ride that we took where he laid down, and just contrasting that sort of stuff with like now, and I'm taking riding very, very slow, because I stopped riding and now I'm kind of just slowly introducing it again. But I'm literally asking him before I mount, and the command is, can I get on? And if he doesn't want me to, he says no, and he takes a step backward.
And we'll leave a video to show you guys kind of an example of this and how it plays out.
Yeah.
So you can actually see instead of just listening.
And he'll take a step backward, and he says no, and I respect that.
So what's his yes?
If he's okay with me getting on, he turns into me with his head. And then it's interesting because, and we've talked about the standing chill, or what Maddie would call the calm default stationing. And we just kind of like to call it standing chill.
Yeah. That's my term.
Our interpretation, right? But so when I'm riding now and he's not comfortable for whatever reason, he will stop and he will stand chill. And that's a clear, hey, would you mind getting off? And he's not bucking, he's not kicking, he's not snatching grass, he just stands chill. And I respect it. I respect his choice of me getting off. But this also introduces, going back to that question of like, okay, if you're in a work setting, and I don't know what horses do these days for work. Like I know the Border Patrol
well, I mean, even
uses
like
them.
barrel racing and jumping. I mean, the competition is work setting.
Okay,
it's
yeah.
something they have to prepare for.
But I don't know. Like all of that's foreign to me, so I don't know. Like, would it be possible to actually like ask your horse to do that, and then they have so much buy-in that they choose it to be? And
so
my guess is yes, because even going back to like Maddie and some of the other people that I've seen where they're competing, they're arguably, in my mind, they're exceptional performances. Like they're like jaw-dropping performances. There's no tack, either
or
bridle.
there is tack, but I mean, there have been a few positive reinforcement, but barrel racing horses or whatever. But you're talking about the freestyle.
Oh, I don't know of any of those like with tack positive reinforcement trainers. So that's something that's even foreign to me. I just don't. I don't know, what it would be like, and I've asked you this question a number of times because I was like, all right, what if the horse is in a competition environment or work environment? Like, can we still do this type of training with them?
Here's my hypothesis.
Or is this too soft?
For those of you that, maybe some of you are listening that are in competition or do border patrol with horses. Gosh, that would be awesome. And, if any of you, I guess, that have working horses are watching this, help us answer this question. My hypothesis is that it is 100%, it's possible to train a horse through using positive reinforcement to jump the poles or do the barrel racing and whatever. And I guess my hypothesis is yes, because you can... Ultimately, that becomes such a good... say you have a jumping horse, and I'm not a jumper. I've never jumped on a horse at all. I don't know how that works or how the training works. But my hypothesis is you train the jump on the ground, and then you click and treat. You train the jump on the ground and make it a really positive thing for the horse. You get on, you teach them the jumping cue using positive reinforcement riding. You teach them the jumping cue, then you click and treat for that, and then eventually the jump becomes such a positive thing that you're essentially reinforcing the horse for jumping at the competition. And then at the end, once they've done the jumping, once they've done the competition and they're finished, then you jackpot them and you tell them that was really good. That's kind of my theory on it. Maddie kind of explains a little bit in her course. She has a Mustang that she's teaching to be comfortable with the tarp, and she's using a mixture of positive and negative reinforcement here. But she talks about how when she knows that the horse can do it, but the horse is kind of like meh, then she'll ask the horse to keep going, and then click and treat for the try kind of thing, which I think is kind of cool, because even if you know that the horse can do it and it's just kind of a little bit of fear, then you can bring your thinking level down and help the horse kind of, okay, well, I can go one more step on the tarp that's scary because I've done it before and I know I'm going to get reinforced. So then you say, okay, well, maybe you said no, but how about go just an inch toward that step? Okay, here's your jackpot. Now I'll dismount. Now let's move on to something else. That's kind of my thought process. But help us uncover this. This is a really interesting question.
And so I guess to kind of wrap up in that way, when talking about freedom of choice, my question to y'all is, how do you feel in your life when you haven't been able to make choices, be it because of work environment, boss, teacher, parent, what have you, versus when you've been able to have full autonomy and freedom of choice in your life? And how can you ultimately unpack that now with your horse, regardless of what sort of training methods you've been following to date?
Yeah.
And are you open-minded enough to maybe learn another technique or try something different that might provide you and your horse a much better relationship moving forward?
Yeah. So
that was a pretty good conversation.
We've got some pretty good
we'll go ahead and
going.
End it there.
Guys, if you have answers or help answers, comments. And
if you're listening on or watching on YouTube.
And YouTube, you could, email us. What's our email address?
podcast@ReinforceTheHorse.com.
Yeah, and contact us and help us uncover these questions to us, I guess, new to this training. Just help us uncover, because we're curious. School us. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you guys all next week.
Have a great one.